Three things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. I have a question to ask you this morning. What does it mean to have hope? Or what does it mean to say that we have hope in something? That was a question that I was posing to myself this week as I was preparing for this service. Because to have hope or to hope in something can mean different things for different people. So, for example, let's look at some of them. What if someone is unemployed and they have been applying for every job that is going? They apply, they send their CV off, and then they hear nothing from potential employers. It can be very frustrating. It can even be soul-destroying to think, why aren't you making a move to interview me for the job that you've advertised? It could mean, therefore, hope for them could mean that they've sent their CV off, they're waiting for the interview, and it comes. And in a moment, there is a breakthrough into the employment world. Equally, for someone else, let's say someone who is on benefits, it could be hoping and waiting for that letter that comes from the Department of Work and Pensions that says they have enough points to be entitled to employment and support allowance or personal independent payments. And it's that hope that they realise that finally, with the health condition that they have or the disability that they have, someone is providing for them and is giving them a way forward in the difficult circumstance that they find themselves in. Hope could be for the parent who is waiting anxiously for their child's GCSE results or A-level results and thinking to themselves, are they going to be able to move forward in the next stage of their learning? It could also mean for a parent that their daughter or their son is expecting a baby, and they pray and they hope that things will turn out right for them. It could be, hope could be working hard for many weeks without a break and hoping for the next moment when they can have a holiday and looking forward to what that holiday might be like. It could be for the person who's lonely, who hasn't seen anyone for some time, just having that opportunity to engage in conversation and have a drink, maybe a coffee or a tea with a close friend or a close family member. Just having the hope of when that's going to be next. That could also be hope. It could also be something like this. Someone who is waiting for the results of a scan or tests that they've had in hospital, following the news that they've been diagnosed with cancer, and hoping that the results will show that the cancer hasn't spread or at least is treatable. These are many ways in which we can describe hope. There are many others too, but those were the ones that I thought about. I wonder what you think hope might be for you. When it comes to the church and to our Christian lives, we also talk about hope. But what does it mean in that context to have hope? Well, again, I think it depends on how we look at hope, because it will mean different things for different people. Hope from a church perspective could mean trusting that in the midst of decline and in the midst of worrying about financial positions of the local church or of the denomination over perhaps, let's say, the next 10 years or so, that God has a plan for us. That no matter what we see, no matter how much decline we might be seeing in the church, it doesn't matter, because we can have hope that God has a plan and a purpose for us. It could mean trying lots and lots of new activities and new ways of engaging with people in the hope that we strike gold. And as a result of striking gold, new people come flocking in to join us in our weekly worship and in the activities that we put on as a church that will see us have growth. Hope, from a faith perspective, let's put the church aside for a moment and just look at it completely from a faith perspective. It could mean looking at the mess that the world has got itself into, with the wars and the rumours of wars that we see all around us, and see the amount of increased human suffering and the economic failures and the natural disasters that we see around us, and apply those to what the Bible could be teaching us about that, and trusting that those signs, those things that are going on in the world that seem a mess to us, are actually signs that the end times are upon us, and that we only have to wait it out, and then when Jesus will return, hope will be restored. The world will be transformed to the desire and design of God's heart. That's another form of hope. Hope could also mean, from a faith perspective, that although we experience in our lives great worries and great stresses, God is there. God is there with us. And we only have to trust that He's with us, that He's walking alongside us in that difficult time, and He will in the end sort it all out for us. And there are many other hopes that we discover as a church and from a faith perspective. But again, it will mean different things for different people. But what does hope actually mean? Well, I think in Psalm 62 that we've read together this morning, we get our answer. In Psalm 62, we hear the psalmist declaring a deep felt sense of hope and trust in God, who they declare their salvation comes from. They declare that as they look at the world around them, that although there are worries and problems, and although various people are putting their trust in other things such as material goods, money, social status and so on, that's not the answer for the psalmist. For them, they know their hope and their salvation is in God alone. But how does the psalmist tell us and tell them that that's the case? And in what ways can we learn to have faith and trust from them? Well, the answer in this is very simple. They are stopping. They are to stop whatever they're doing in their lives, and they are simply to find Sabbath rest in God. That, for the psalmist, is in essence what hope is: finding Sabbath rest in God. In verse 1 it says this: "My soul finds rest in God. My salvation comes from Him." They are saying that Sabbath rest is the way in which we can know that we have hope. The psalmist then goes on to describe what they mean by that, saying that although they may be assaulted by life's problems, by temptations, by worries, by strains, by stresses and so on, none of these things will overcome them, because their hope is secure in God, who is their rock and their salvation. But to know that, they say they need to have Sabbath rest. They need to rest in God's presence, to let go of everything that is crowding into your mind, and in its place, letting God minister to our needs. Sabbath rest, according to the psalmist, is about being still. It's about putting all those worries, all those concerns, all those problems to one side and putting God at the centre of our lives. And then realising that no matter what we face in life, God is there as our hope. The psalmist describes everything else in life as almost a storm which rages about them, a storm that prevents them from focusing on God. And whilst their eyes are fixed on those other things, the psalmist declares there is no hope. There is no hope for them because they cannot see a way out of it. But as soon as God replaces all of those worries, all those concerns, all those anxieties, and is placed at the centre of a person's heart, soul, mind and strength, as soon as God is at the centre, the storm, they say, can rage, but its effects are overcome. Just think for a moment about a hurricane. We know what the effects of a hurricane are like. We've been witnesses to those effects in what we've seen on the news in the past year. Do you remember last summer when those hurricanes caused great havoc in the Caribbean? We saw some truly tragic sights on our television screens. Now, I'm not going to degrade all of that, but what is fascinating about a hurricane is the way in which it is formed. It is circular in shape. Actually, my son would say it is elliptical in shape. And around the outside of a hurricane, the wind and the rain are truly horrific. They're truly horrific in their power and their destruction. But at the centre, in the eye of the storm, there's actually a stillness. It's actually described as an eerie stillness. People who have experienced living through a hurricane describe the moment where the eye of the storm is directly above them as eerily silent. It's eerily still. And although they know that the next band of wind and the next band of rain are about to come upon them, in that moment there is surprising calm. There is surprising stillness. And this is what the psalmist is saying happens when God is at the centre of our lives. The storm may rage, the psalmist says. The storm may rage around us. But while we have our eyes fixed on God, there is stillness. There is Sabbath rest. There is trust. And there is hope. I imagine this must have been how the disciples must have felt when they went through the experience of the storm on the lake in the Gospel stories. When they thought that Jesus had abandoned them to their fate, all they saw were the effects of the storm raging around them. And they cried out to God, "Lord, don't you care that we're about to drown?" As soon as they fixed their eyes on Jesus, though, and placed their hope and their trust in him, the storm suddenly became silent, and there was an eerie calm. And that's really what hope means for us as Christians. The psalmist is saying that we must place God at the centre of our lives. But not only place God at the centre of our own individual lives, we must place God at the centre of our church's life. We must then seek to put God at the centre of our community, maybe then our nation, and then our world. Because then we will see the world transformed to the desire and design of God's heart. The storms of decline, the storms of financial uncertainty, the storms of frantic activity and trying to think of a way in which of bringing new people into the church simply lead us to feeling hopeless, simply lead us to feeling restless and uncertain about what to do next. And not only that, they start leading us to blaming everyone else for our problems. We start to scapegoat people and say, "You're the reason why we're in a mess. You're the problem." But in reality, it's because we're simply not still. We're not allowing God to be at the centre. Because with God at the centre, everything starts to change. And we start to feel more content. And we start to feel more assured and restful, knowing that God is in control. The storms may continue to rage, but our hope and our salvation can be in God alone. And unlike the psalmist who wrote Psalm 62, we have a double reason to have hope, because we have a relationship with God through Jesus. Through Jesus coming to earth and teaching us how we should live our lives and access an amazing relationship with God. Remember that he teaches us about the importance of prayer, faith and hope, and stillness in God's presence. If you notice, every action that Jesus performs in his earthly ministry always begins with prayer, always ends with prayer, always has a sense of stillness. Jesus always goes back to a lonely place to pray and to be with his Father. We see that example demonstrated to us. But together we also see Jesus giving his life for us, suffering and dying on the cross and then rising again, so that we can know that God is in control of everything and is offering us a promise of new life, where all the worries, all the stresses, all the strains, all the problems that we experience are just simply taken away. We fix our eyes on God through Jesus, through the cross and the resurrection, and hope and the promise of new life are given to us. And all we have to do is be still and marvel at God's amazing gift of love to us. So the question I leave with you this morning is this: do you rest in God's presence? Are your eyes fixed on God through Jesus? Is the storm raging about you and you see no way out? Or is the storm raging about you but you have no worries and concerns because God is at the centre of your life? Do you allow his stillness to give you hope in your daily life? Amen.